I never wanted a sister. When my mom announced she was pregnant, I was 10, and I hoped for a brother. But when Lily was born, everything changed for the worse. From the very beginning, she became the center of our parents' universe. I was used to being their little princess, but suddenly, I was second best. Lily got everything: love, attention, gifts, praise. If she cried, they comforted her. If I cried, they called me dramatic. I tried to be a good daughter, but the older we got, the more I felt the unfairness. Her achievements were celebrated. Mine were expected. I had to work hard for straight A's, while Lily could just smile and get praised for passing grades. I hated her. Not because she did anything wrong, but because she existed. One day when I was 16 and she was 6, our parents went out, leaving us alone. She tried to play with me, but I didn't care. I was angry. When she kept pestering me, I shoved her hard. Her head hit the edge of the table. Blood. Screaming. Fear. I froze, thinking I had killed her. But Lily woke up and started crying. When our parents came home, I told them she had just fallen. They believed me, as always. After that, she clung to me even more, as if she sensed my hatred and was desperate to earn my love. It drove me insane. Years passed. We grew up. Lily was always kind, always caring. Even as our parents continued putting her above me, she still loved me. And I still hated her. I remember that day too well. I was 14, and Lily was only 4. She was always the family's favorite, the perfect child. Our parents adored her, while I remained in the shadows. But that day, I decided to change everything. Mom had bought a beautiful porcelain figurine, expensive, rare, one of those things kids weren't even allowed to go near. She placed it on the mantle and then left for errands, leaving us alone. I watched Lily playing with her dolls, and suddenly, an idea sparked in my head. I grabbed the figurine and threw it to the floor. A loud crack shattered the silence as shards scattered across the floor. Lily froze, her eyes filling with fear. "Lily, what have you done?" I screamed in fake horror. She blinked, trying to process what was happening. "It wasn't me," she whispered. "You grabbed it, I saw you." I raised my voice, already hearing Mom's footsteps at the door. When she saw the broken figurine, her face went pale. "What happened?" "Lily took it and dropped it." I blurted out before my sister could even defend herself. Lily burst into tears. "No, Mom, I didn't. I didn't even touch it." But who did they believe? Of course me. I was older, more mature, more responsible. Lily was punished. No sweets for a week, no toys. And me? I felt like a winner. But here's the strange part. Instead of hating me, Lily still tried to be my friend. And I didn't stop there. Lily was 9, I was 19. I had already moved on with my life, but deep inside, the hatred still burned. Our parents adored her, while I remained difficult, problematic. So I decided to show them who their perfect daughter really was. We were at a family gathering at our grandmother's house. The place was filled with relatives, all talking about how smart, beautiful, and well-mannered Lily was. I couldn't take it. Later that evening, I went into the bedroom where Mom's purse was. I pulled out a $100 bill and stuffed it into Lily's backpack. Then, I accidentally noticed the missing money. "Mom, where's that $100 bill you put in your purse yesterday?" I asked as casually as possible. Mom frowned and started searching. Her expression changed when she couldn't find it. "Someone took it." I bit my lip, pretending to hesitate. "Maybe we should check everyone's things? Just in case someone misplaced it." Mom agreed. And when the bill was found in Lily's backpack, her face turned ghostly white. It wasn't me. I didn't take it. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "Lily, why would you do that?" Mom asked, disappointment heavy in her voice. "I didn't. Someone put it there." Her voice trembled. But, of course, no one believed her. That night, Lily sobbed in her room. And I lay in mine listening, feeling nothing. Only now, years later, do I realize that I nearly destroyed her life that day. But what's worse, I didn't even regret it. I spent years trying to understand why Lily was loved more. Why she got the prettier clothes while I got the cheaper ones. Why she was allowed more freedom while I was held to stricter standards. Why, even when I did my best, Mom and Dad still looked at her with more warmth than they ever did at me. I remember being 12, and she was just 2. That Christmas, she got a giant dollhouse, fully furnished, with tiny plates, little lights, and miniature toys. I got a sweater. Plain, no designs. You're older now, you don't need things like that, Mom said when she noticed my disappointed face. But I wasn't older. I was still a child. I remember going shopping with Mom. She would pick out the cutest dresses for Lily. Ruffles, bows, soft pastel colors. And for me, plain jeans, basic shirts. You're a big girl now. Comfort matters more than looks, she explained. But didn't I want to feel pretty too? Didn't I deserve the same? I remember the time I brought home a certificate for outstanding academic achievement. I held it in my hands, glowing with pride, hoping my parents would be excited. Good job, Dad said, nodding like I had simply put my plate in the sink. And then Lily came home with a lopsided drawing from preschool, her letters uneven and smudged, and Mom and Dad gasped in delight. They hugged her, praised her, and hung that piece of paper on the fridge like it was a masterpiece. I went to my room, shut the door, and for the first time, really asked myself, why not me? Why was Lily special? Why was she so easy to love? I searched for an answer. Maybe it was because she was younger. Maybe they were just tired of parenting by the time they got to me. Or maybe they just never loved me as much. And that's when something dark grew inside me. I looked at my sister, this bright, glowing little girl, and I didn't want to hug her. I wanted to erase her, to make her disappear, to see if there would be space for me if she was gone. But the more I hated her, the more she clung to me. And now, as an adult, I look at her kindness, her need to please everyone, her warmth, and I realize she was never the enemy. And me. I just couldn't handle being loved less. I never told anyone, but sometimes I wanted to hurt Lily. Not in a serious way, not really. Just a little. To push her when she ran down the hallway so she'd trip. To tug on her long, perfectly brushed hair because mine never looked as nice. To grab her favorite toy and hide it, just to see her cry. To watch her face turn red with frustration. Sometimes, I even imagined her falling off her bike and scraping her knees. Or accidentally cutting her finger while helping Mom in the kitchen. I never actually did anything terrible, but inside me, there was always this little desire to see her suffer just a little. And you know what's the worst part? It felt satisfying. When Lily cried over a broken toy, I liked it. When, for once, our parents got mad at her instead of me, I felt victorious. When she came to me with tear-filled eyes, telling me her friend didn't want to play with her, I just shrugged. But inside, I enjoyed seeing it. I thought I hated her. But now, looking back, I realize I just wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I felt. I wanted her to hurt. Just a little. Just sometimes. But she's just a kid. I hated those words. But she's just a kid. That phrase was the answer to everything. Why didn't Lily have to clean? Because she's just a kid. Why did I have to wash the dishes after dinner while she sat at the table, swinging her legs? Because she's just a kid. Why did I have to make the beds, sweep the floors, help Mom cook, while Lily got to play with her dolls and run around the yard, carefree and happy? Because she's just a kid. That day, I felt the unfairness more than ever. It was my break. My only free days after school when I finally wanted to meet my friends, go out, do something for myself. But no. I was stopped right at the door. You're not going anywhere until you clean the whole house. The floors. The windows. The dust. The bathroom. The kitchen. Everything. And Lily? Lily sat on the couch watching cartoons laughing. Because she's just a kid. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm into my parents' room and demand justice. I wanted to grab Lily by the hand, drag her into the room, shove a rag into her hands, and make her understand what it felt like to clean up after everyone. But I said nothing. I just picked up the bucket and started mopping the floors. And you know what? As I passed the living room, Lily turned to me, waved cheerfully, and asked, "Will you play with me later?" Like nothing was happening. Like she didn't even notice that I was being used as free labor while she was being pampered and spoiled. I looked at her, felt the anger burning inside me, and just turned away and walked off. Because she's just a kid. And I was just the older one. I hated everyone. At first, it was just jealousy toward my sister. I thought that when I got older, things would change and they would start to appreciate me. But the older I got, the more I realized that wasn't going to happen. And the hate slowly started shifting from Lily to my parents. They always put her above everything. Lily, my little princess, someone to love and pamper, someone to be soft and understanding with. And me? I was just the older daughter who had to tolerate everything and do all the work. I remember one day asking my mom, "Why do you always worry about Lily, but You never seem to notice me." She didn't even answer. She just brushed it off, telling me that I was older and should handle things on my own. And in that moment, I realized that I would never get the same attention. I would never be told that I was smart or beautiful, that my successes were the result of hard work. Lily was always special. She could do whatever she wanted and always remained helpless, protected. But me, I was the one who had to keep it all together, work, and take care of everyone. And you know what? I started to hate them all. I hated how they could look at Lily with such attention but never notice me. I hated how they forgave her mischief and her tantrums as if she were a little angel who couldn't do anything wrong. I hated that when I said something, I was ignored. I didn't want to be the older one anymore. I just wanted someone to finally notice me. I didn't want to be an adult. I never asked to be an adult. When you grow up, everyone around you starts expecting seriousness, responsibility, and the ability to keep everything under control. But no one told me that it would mean being ignored, being invisible, and missing out on the attention that I once craved. I didn't want to take on all those responsibilities. I didn't want to be the one who always decides, who always knows, who always does. I didn't want to be the one who had to make sure everything was okay, make sure everyone was happy, make sure everyone was satisfied. I was a child. I didn't want to think about problems. I wanted someone to ask me, "What do you want for Christmas?" I wanted to get something I actually wanted, not something practical or necessary. But that didn't happen. I wasn't the one who was spoiled, the one who was pampered. That was all for Lily. Sometimes I'd sit in my room, close the door, and just cry. Why did I have to be the older one? Why didn't anyone ask me what I wanted? Why did I always have to make decisions? Why were my desires, my feelings something that could just be ignored? I didn't want to carry that weight. I wanted to be like Lily, small, carefree, the one everyone loved and spoiled. But I couldn't be that way. And it hurt so much. I dreamed that everything could be different. That it could just be me, the older one but still loved. That someone would ask me what I needed. That I could say, "I want a doll," or "I want to go to the beach." But instead, I had to think about how to help around the house, how not to upset my parents, how to please everyone. And for Lily, everything was simpler. She could cry, throw a tantrum, and she was still loved. And I started to hate myself for it. I hated that I grew up too fast. I hated that I had to be so responsible. I wanted to be a child. I wanted someone to comfort me when I was upset, to ask me what I wanted for a holiday, and I could just answer, "I want to be happy." I even started cutting out pictures of our family and gluing them into my journal, but I cut Lily out. I imagined how great it would be if she didn't exist. How I would be the center of attention. How I would get everything. In my mind, if Lily didn't exist, everything would be completely different. The family would be whole, but it would be different. Without Lily, without her tantrums and the attention my parents always gave her. But I knew it was impossible. Lily was part of our family, and I was part of it too. But still, I felt unnecessary. And every time I cut her out of the photo, deep down, I knew that I couldn't get rid of that feeling. I always noticed how unfair everything was. As a child, it seemed like I knew from the very beginning that life wasn't just divided into good and bad. I always understood that I got less. But what really bothered me the most was that Lily had everything, and much more than me. We lived in the same house, in the same family, but everything was unequal. Even our rooms weren't the same. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but when I realized that it wasn't by accident, but perhaps even a conscious decision, it really hit me hard. Lily was only 6 years old when she got her huge room. It was bright, spacious, with a big window where she could always look out at the beautiful garden. This room had everything: toys, books, soft carpets, and even a little couch where she could sit and dream. And me? My room was tiny. Just a small nook in the corner of the house, with a dim window that barely let in any light. I couldn't even play in there properly. My parents often said that I should be grateful because I had my own room, even though it was small. But I knew perfectly well that they said that just to make me feel better about it. Lily, with her huge room, always attracted attention. When guests came over, everyone marveled at her bedroom, her toys, her coziness. And I sat in my tiny room, thinking that I couldn't even bring anyone there. I was embarrassed because I didn't feel comfortable in it. At first, I tried to justify this unfairness to myself. I thought, well, she's younger, she needs more space, more attention. But with each passing year, with each holiday, I felt more and more that none of this made sense. Why her? Why did she get everything and I got almost nothing? When we were little, I couldn't understand why I couldn't at least temporarily take her room. Why did my parents always say she deserved more space? Why didn't they ever think about how I felt in my tiny room, where barely a bed and desk fit? Lily was always the center of attention. If something was wrong, everyone called her and asked how she was feeling. But when something bothered me or upset me, I felt like no one noticed my feelings. I wasn't naturally jealous, but this situation just drove me crazy. And every time I went into her room and saw her lying on the big couch surrounded by toys and stuffed friends, I wanted to scream. In my room, there wasn't even enough space to lie down and not think about how unfair everything in life was. And now, as I've grown up and Lily and I became older, I realized this unfairness never went away. Even when she started earning her own money and buying herself beautiful things, I still felt like everything she did brought her more joy. And worst of all, my parents never understood that they gave her more than me. When Lily turned 14, she suddenly decided it was time to have a conversation. A conversation about everything we had never talked about before, about how much I hated her, about how I had always felt like I was in her shadow. She probably thought that if we finally opened up to each other, maybe something would change. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. We were sitting in my room, and she sat across from me. There was something different in her eyes. Not the usual look she had when she came to me, not the look of a younger sister who was asking for forgiveness for something. No, this look was more mature. There was something grown-up and serious about it. "I want to talk to you," she said, and I felt something tighten inside me. Of course, I knew what she was going to talk about. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to open up to her about my feelings, even though it was necessary. But I nodded silently. She started by saying that she noticed how our relationship was changing. She said that all these years, she felt like I didn't love her, that she had always been in the shadow of my resentment, and that it hurt her to realize that I had never accepted her, never saw her as an equal person, but only as someone who took the place that should have been mine. I couldn't say a word. Instead of explaining to her why I felt that way, why I thought she was always the favorite, why there was always more attention toward her, I just sat there, silently staring at the floor. I couldn't bring myself to admit how much time I had spent hating her, and now I couldn't even find the words to admit it. Lily kept talking, not understanding why I was silent. She said that she wanted things to be different, that it hurt her too, that she also wanted me to love her, not keep her at a distance. And then, somewhat awkwardly, she ended the conversation. We both fell silent, and in the silence, I realized that the conversation had never really happened. It only skimmed the surface, barely touching those feelings we both had been hiding. I didn't say anything important to her. I couldn't share my own struggles. I wasn't ready, and maybe I never would be. Lily got up, hugged me gently as always, but it wasn't the same. She kissed me on the cheek, and I didn't even move. Then she left. I was still sitting in my room, deceived by the fact that this conversation had never become real. As the years passed, a lot changed, and I started to realize things that I couldn't understand before. When I was a teenager, it seemed like my whole life was a fight for attention, love, and recognition. I blamed Lily for being the family favorite, for making me feel like I was always in the background. It seemed like it was her fault that everything was so unfair. I thought that if she didn't exist, I would get the attention I needed. But as I grew older, I started seeing things differently. I began to think about how hard it must have been for Lily, how her life wasn't perfect either, despite all the attention she got. She didn't choose to be the favorite. It was just the way things were, and she didn't have any control over it. I realized she wasn't to blame for being loved more. It wasn't her choice. We don't get to choose how we're loved, which part of the family we belong to. Lily didn't choose to be the younger one, to be the one who got all the attention, who was always in the center of their world. It wasn't her decision, it wasn't her fault. It was simply how my parents saw us. I needed to understand that she wasn't the cause of my pain. I couldn't blame her for getting more, because it wasn't her choice. I tried to convince myself that if she weren't like that, I would be different if my parents loved me the way they loved her. But that wasn't true. I couldn't change the past. I couldn't change how they saw us. And in the end, I realized it didn't matter. Lily shouldn't have to suffer because of my grudges. Now, when I looked at her, I understood that she was just as much a girl as I was, with the same dreams, struggles, and problems. She wasn't perfect, and neither was I. I had spent all those years holding on to anger and hatred, and now I felt ashamed of that. How much time I wasted feeling envy and resentment, when I could have simply been there for her, supported her, instead of being her enemy. I realized that all this time, I had been wrong. The guilt wasn't in Lily. but in how I perceived everything. I should have learned to let go of the grudges and see her not as the cause of my pain, but as my sister, with whom I could have been closer. But by that point, I had already lost so many years that I couldn't get them back. My younger sister wasn't to blame for being loved more. She didn't choose her role in the family. We were all just trying to find our place in this world, and I realized that her place wasn't the reason for my struggle. As I grew older, especially around the age of 18, I began to realize that there was no fault in Lily. She didn't choose to be loved more. She didn't have control over how our parents treated her. No matter how much I wanted to blame her, I started to understand that all the anger and aggression I had wasn't directed at her, but at the people who raised us. My parents. It was my mom, who always put Lily on a pedestal, praising her for every, even the most insignificant achievement, while ignoring my efforts. Mom always said how smart, kind, and caring Lily was, how she did everything right. And me? I was too mature, too strict, too independent. I was often told I should understand that now we had Lily and needed to support her. But who supported me? No one seemed to care. I became a given. I had to be the adult, and everyone expected me to get everything right, even though no one told me how exactly. Over time, I began to feel the anger and disappointment building up in my mind. I couldn't believe that my mom, my own mother, paid so little attention to me. How could she be so oblivious to my feelings? Why did she always stop at Lily, not noticing how hard it was for me to live in her shadow? Mom could never see how I was being bullied at school, how hard it was to be the older daughter, the one who always had to be perfect. All she saw was Lily, and no matter how hard I tried to do everything by her rules, it was never enough. I started thinking that if it weren't for Mom, if she hadn't put Lily on such a high pedestal, maybe I wouldn't feel this resentment. She was the one who taught us to believe that Lily deserved more, while I was just supposed to be the adult and handle everything on my own. She didn't see that I needed attention too, that I needed care, love. It was at that point, when I understood that Lily wasn't to blame, that I began to direct my anger at my parents. I blamed them for not seeing me, not hearing me, not appreciating my efforts. It wasn't just pain, it was rage. I wanted them to finally notice me, to see that I needed more than just being the older sister. But it was too late. All I could do was come to terms with the fact that this unfairness would remain unresolved. And the older I got, the clearer it became that perhaps I wouldn't ever get what I so desperately needed from them. As I got older, I became more irritable and closed off. I couldn't stand the constant arguments with my parents, especially with my mom. With every word they said, I felt an unbearable resentment building up inside me, a boiling anger. It was like they didn't realize I was no longer a child, that I needed more than just support and praise for Lily. Every time they told me I needed to understand or help out, I felt like my soul was filling with pain. Mom always defended Lily. Every little thing Lily did, she would exalt, while not noticing that I was always trying to do everything without complaining. I tried to be the adult, the strong one, but I didn't understand why I had to do everything while Lily didn't. And all those endless remarks like, "You're the adult, you should understand," started to infuriate me. I didn't want to be the adult. I wanted someone to see me too, to ask me something, to not always tell me, "You're an adult, you don't need attention." Arguments with my mom became more frequent. We could hardly talk without sarcastic comments, dissatisfaction, and reproaches. I tried to convey that I needed more freedom, but Mom didn't understand. She always thought I would handle it and cope, like I didn't have feelings, like I didn't need her support and attention. She just always thought I should be the example, and Lily, her little princess to whom everything was forgiven. That's when I decided I needed to leave. As soon as possible. I couldn't stay in this house anymore, in this atmosphere where everything I felt was ignored, where there was no space for my emotions. I needed to break free, to feel independent, to start building my life. College seemed like my way out. I started looking for housing, figuring out how to leave as soon as I graduated from school. I couldn't wait. Every day in this house felt like torture to me. I was ready to leave it all behind. My parents, their house, their perfect expectations, and start a new life where no one would tell me what to do. I was looking for opportunities to study in another city, to get out as fast as possible and feel free. My only goal was to become independent. I dreamed of a life where no one would control me, where there would be no guilt or resentment, where I could make my own decisions. Leaving was hard, but I knew it was the only way. When I turned 30, Lily unexpectedly came to me with a small gift. It was her old diary. We hadn't really been close for many years, and our relationship had remained strained. We spoke, but always just at the surface level. Lily had always tried to connect, but I kept avoiding her, not knowing how to be with her. All these years, I hadn't realized that her only wish was for me to be her best friend, not just a sister by blood. Lily silently handed me the diary and quietly said, "I know you don't like to read, but I always dreamed that you would know how I felt. I want you to understand how hard it's been for me all these years." I sat down, holding the small leather-bound diary in my hands, and felt a tight knot in my stomach. I didn't want to read it. I wasn't ready for what I might find there, but somehow, unable to refuse, I began reading. Every page was full of pain. Lily had kept this diary since childhood, and in it was all her truth. She wrote about her feelings, how she had always tried to be close to me, but I pushed her away. She wrote about how she wished we were closer, how she wanted me to stop being jealous and to accept her, to stop seeing her as an enemy. Everything I did was to ignore her efforts. Every line was full of despair and longing. The more I read, the more the guilt overwhelmed me. I could feel something tightening inside me. Tears began to fall down my cheeks involuntarily, but I couldn't stop. It was too late to realize how much pain I had caused my sister. I thought they always gave her too much attention, but in reality, I had closed my eyes to her feelings. When I finished reading, I looked up and saw Lily standing in the corner. She didn't say anything, just watched me. We stood there in silence, and I realized that words no longer mattered. She wasn't waiting for an apology from me. She wasn't looking for explanations. She just needed me to finally hear her. I couldn't say anything. I just cried. I couldn't believe how long I had ignored her and not noticed her attempts to get closer. It wasn't the warm ending I had imagined. I knew it was too late, but still, I cried because I understood that I couldn't change anything now. Lily didn't approach me, didn't hug me. We just stood in silence, like two strangers who once were sisters. I sat in silence, watching as time passed, and we still hadn't become the sisters I had dreamed of. Not the kind you can share secrets with, the ones who are there during tough times, who become your support. We weren't even close. My aggression, my jealousy, my inner walls, all of that made me lose what could have been important for both of us. When I think about how it all was, I realize one simple truth. I couldn't love Lily because I couldn't accept myself. My jealousy of her, my feeling that she was always on a pedestal, always the favorite, those were just reflections of my own dissatisfaction with myself. I never felt important. I didn't feel worthy of love and attention. And instead of dealing with those issues, I took it out on my sister. Why did it happen this way? Because no one taught me how to communicate, no one cared about how I felt, and by the time I started to grow up, I was too proud to admit that my problems actually stemmed from within me. I couldn't forgive either my parents or Lily because I never learned how to forgive myself. If only I could go back, if only I could look my younger sister in the eyes and say, "I love you. Forgive me for everything." But I can't. Time has passed. Time doesn't come back, and the feelings I suppressed for so long no longer have the power they could have had. The moral of the story? Maybe it's simple, but it's also very important. Never leave room for jealousy and resentment in your heart because they destroy you from within. Acknowledge your feelings, accept them, and learn to forgive, especially yourself. Time doesn't wait, and when you realize that you could change something, it may already be too late. I don't want others to go through what I went through. It's important to appreciate those who are around you while you have the chance. And if you have the opportunity to fix things, don't miss it.